introduction to the business world, and it would change his life. Much to his surprise, Carl found himself fascinated by business and spent 24 years in the corporate world, working his way up on the sales floor, which is one of the best learning places possible, to a director of information and technology. He worked with such companies as Warehouse Records, C&R Clothiers, the Walt Disney Company, and Smart and Final, and found the principles of theater and business were very closely associated. Carl left the corporate world and started his speaking career 4 years ago and speaks to over 60 realtor groups a year and various professional and trade groups. He was featured in the August 2012 Toastmaster magazine for his innovative approach of using theater games in his workshop for professionals. Please welcome Carl Walsh with Keepers of the Flame, Finding Your Truth and Sharing It with the World.
Remember superheroes? We all remember superheroes. They're back, aren't they? They're back. Even in the 50s and 60s, we had Spider-Man, Superman. Fantastic Four came along a little bit later. And by the way, for those of you who remember the 60s, not all of us do, although I'm told we had a very good time. There was another group that were superheroes called Fab Four. You know who I'm talking about, right? Only they were real living people, weren't they? Superheroes don't necessarily have to be in comic books or in fiction. They can be real. Let me tell you a little bit about my first superhero. It was 1962. It was a cold winter afternoon. I was 7 years old, by the way, and my mother dropped me off in front of a movie theater. She gave me $1.50, which paid for my ticket, my Coke, and my popcorn. It was 1962, right? I went in. It was one of those great old movie theaters that no longer exist, with the beautiful upholstery, the red curtain. And this was one of those movies, back in those days, it had an overture before the movie actually started. So I sat down with my Coke and my popcorn, and the lights faded, and all of a sudden, the crashing of drums started. This was the beginning of the overture. And it was a fanfare, and it was just a cacophony of sound that rose and built until finally, after it crescendoed, we heard the theme that all of us recognize today from Lawrence of Arabia. And I sat in that chair transfixed for the following 4 hours. When the lights came back up, I noticed I had not touched my Coke or my popcorn. And it was a transformational moment. I walked outside the theater to where my mother was waiting to pick me up, and she said, "Well, how was it?" And I said, "I want to do that." She said, "What, you want to, I don't know, go to Arabia?" I said, "No. I want to take people to Arabia the way he did." By the way, that was one of the few times at that point in my life where I got a sentence out without a stutter or a stammer. Probably because I was connected to a deep desire that was at my core. And of course, he that I was talking about was, of course, Peter O'Toole. Now, it's a little odd for a short, cross-eyed kid with a stammer to want to be an actor. But I pursued it. Didn't get very far until one day I saw a ballet class. We went to pick up a friend's daughter. And again, it was transformation. That perfect combination of sound and motion. It spoke to me. It was a form of communication. And to somebody who had a problem communicating, suddenly I saw a way to communicate without my weakness. And that's something I did go into, and it was mentioned earlier this evening. That actually was my first job. I was a 13-year-old professional ballet dancer, working with some of the very best in the world. But then I started working on the speech problem. And the funny thing is, once I got into acting, once I started going on stage, the stammer disappeared. It went away. Now it's not totally gone. You'll probably hear it from me tonight. But it's not a problem anymore. It's something I live with. It's something I work with. And getting on stage and getting in touch with my inner core is what made it go away. That was the important thing. Now, some years later, just as a side note, I was lucky enough to get accepted into the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art in London. The very first day I was there, I went into one of the classrooms. I just wanted to be alone. I just wanted to have the experience. And up on the wall was a list of names. It was the Vanbrugh Award, which I later found out is the highest award that they give to the graduating students from the Royal Academy. And I looked down it, and there was a who's who of British acting. I knew almost every name on there. Believe me, the Academy Awards, Hollywood, theater would be much poorer places without the people that were on this list. And then I finally got down to guess who. And I never knew he actually went to the Royal Academy of Dramatic Art. And I realized that I was home. So what is all this about? Really, it comes down to we tend to want to communicate. In fact, we sort of have to communicate, don't we? And if you don't believe me about ballet, by the way, as a form of communication, just take into consideration that as a species, scientists can take us back, about 4.5, 5 million years. We learned to speak about 50 to 80,000 years ago, as far as they can tell. Which means for most of our existence, we didn't speak. Probably fewer fights. And that's why we didn't have governments. But we are wired to communicate without words. That's still a part of who we are. And one of the problems that we get into is thinking that the words are so important. There's so many other parts of communication that have nothing to do with words. Just think about it. Toastmasters works on it with your voice, your body language, how you look your audience in the eye. We communicate in all sorts of different ways that have nothing to do with words. And Toastmasters can help us out a lot with that. But there's one thing they can't help us with, and that's the most important tool, the most important weapon in our arsenal. And that's what we talk about. That's our problem. And there's, I think in the modern world today, a real problem about communication. We have too much of it to begin with, and most of it is worthless. Most of it is worse than worthless. It confuses. It obfuscates. Its purpose is to do that. You've all heard of George Orwell's Big Brother, of course, and the doublespeak, and how it's all there to confuse. And that's what I fear communication is coming to today. And as a culture, we're not connecting anymore to who we are and expressing our innermost thoughts. Because after all, it does leave you vulnerable, doesn't it? It leaves you vulnerable to criticism, to lack of acceptance, all of it. And so we shy away and we pull back and we don't really communicate anymore. To get this across, I'm going to do one of the things I like to do. Now those of you in District 52, you may have seen me do this a little bit. But that's okay, because this is one of those things, it's a theater game, and it's always good to do theater games even if you've already done them before. It's like the guy that says, I don't like motivational speakers. Why? Well, because you go in there, you listen to them, and a little while later it wears off. And my answer to that is, well, so does taking a bath, but it's still good to do it every once in a while. Well, the same with theater games. So what we're going to do here, I'm going to point out to you, I think, the biggest reason why we don't communicate well today. Even in Toastmasters, I see it all the time. So I need a couple of volunteers to come up here. Come on up. Come on up. One more? Sure, come on up. Now, what I want you to do is I want you to plan the holiday meeting that we were talking about earlier this evening. Okay? Now, there's a rule here. Here's the trick. Great. Join us. Here's the trick. Every sentence you say has to start with the word but. All right, except for the first person, which will be you. You'll make a suggestion, followed by you, followed by you, followed by you, and back again. All right, we're going to plan this. We're going to get this meeting all planned. All right? Okay, start.
I'm going back to the East Coast to meet my family.
But that's not a good place to have the holiday party. I believe a better holiday party would be right here at the Elephant.
But a restaurant is not the place for a holiday party. You want to be more intimate. You want to have something that's where you can relax and be yourself.
Yeah, but that would involve someone opening their home and going to so much work. We should do it in a more simpler, easier to pull off environment.
But it's going to be so much fun if we have it here at the Elephant Bar.
But I think what we need to do is take a vote. It's very important we need to find out, is it the Elephant Bar? Is it going to be somebody's house? Or is it going to be in the parking lot behind the alley?
All right, that's enough right there.
Nowhere fast.
How long do you think it's going to take them to organize this thing? Probably never.
Until the day of the party?
Right, exactly. And it will be in probably 4 different locations. How long do you think it's going to be before they get into a fight? Soon. Soon. Very soon, right? Okay. Do we do this to ourselves day in and day out? Do we come up with an idea and say, well, that's a good idea, but do we do that to each other in the workplace? And the minute you start doing that, you kill all connection to your innate creativity. We all have that need to communicate, but we keep stopping ourselves, don't we? And that's one of the things that Toastmasters creates a great place for you to work on it, but they can't help you do it. You got to do it. But you have this great sandbox with no risk, really. You can come in here and do it and risk it and dare to be bad. Go ahead, dare to be bad. Now, I want you to try this again. You're going to plan the holiday party. Everything you say starts with "and." All right? Go.
Starting from the beginning.
Right.
The Elephant Bar is such a wonderful place.
And I believe we can invite our families and our friends because it's a wonderful meal.
And they have such wonderful food.
And we all know where it is, so everyone will have an easy time getting here.
And it's so much easier to buy our food rather than to go or prepare our own meals.
And we don't have to have a potluck, and we could have an white elephant gift.
Well, you get the point, right?
Yeah.
Just change one little word. Now, it's not a matter of changing a word. It's a matter of changing how you think. Get your mind out of the butt. Get it into the and. That's what's important. These guys will have a party. They will get there. And it's going to be pretty good, I think. Thank you very much. Now, getting back to superheroes. Remember, again, all those great superheroes that we had back in the 50s, the 60s. We had Jackie Robinson. We had Mickey Mantle and Sandy Koufax. When you think of it, professional sports was a lot different back then, wasn't it? These were people you could actually look up to. We had superheroes playing back in those days instead of just millionaires. We also had, some people would consider John F. Kennedy a superhero. And there are many more that we could name. And of course, for those of us in Toastmasters, there's got to be one superhero that stands well, head and shoulders above the rest. And that would have to be, I think, Martin Luther King. This is a man who was in touch with his gut, and he had a lot to be in touch with. We just recently celebrated the 50th anniversary of his I Had a Dream speech, just a few weeks ago. How many speeches do we celebrate the anniversary of? Not many. Not a whole lot, right? Why? Why that one? I think it's because more than any other, he spoke from the gut. He spoke from his truth, not somebody else's, not what he thought somebody would want to hear. He spoke from his truth, which is a great role model for all of us, whatever it is that you want to speak about. I don't care if it's a business presentation on how to use a new accounting system. In the IT department, I had to do stuff like that a lot. You can still find in those topics some truth, some inner truths. If you just talk to the people who use the systems, you'll find them. You'll find them, and you'll have much more impact on the people that you're talking to, particularly if you can personalize it. I don't know if you know that Martin Luther King, his I Have a Dream speech, was not prepared. Actually, he had a prepared speech, which he gave and had finished, and was about to walk off. When Mahalia Jackson, the great singer, was standing behind him, and she had heard him talk a few evenings earlier. They were just talking, and he talked about his dream for America. And she said, "Martin, tell them about your dream. Tell them about your dream." And extemporaneously, we got one of the great speeches in American history, in the English language. He certainly ranks up there with all of the greats ever. From Henry V, to Churchill, to John F. Kennedy. He's right up there with them. Abraham Lincoln, those 286 words. I cannot read that speech and not tear up. That's how meaningful those 286 words. And by the way, the guy that was on the platform before him went for 2 hours. Nobody remembers it. And he was the great orator of his day. But we remember those 286 words. They came from him. So here's what I want to challenge you all to do. I mentioned earlier that modern communication, I believe, is failing us. And I believe we're failing each other. Today, communication has become a weapon of mass destruction. It dulls our senses. It lessens our intelligence, our reasoning, and it wrecks our relationships with other people, doesn't it? But we can fix that. We can fix that. Or at least we can take a step towards it here in President. Because, well, we're here to communicate. We actually look on it. We actually think it's important. And that's what I want to challenge you to do. I want to challenge you to get in touch with your inner truth, with who you really are, like I did that morning when I watched Lawrence of Arabia and suddenly I was able to speak without a stutter. Because I believed in something so desperate. And the other people that I mentioned who believe so desperately in their thoughts. I want to challenge you that you need to take responsibility that every time you get in front of a group of people to speak, you owe them and yourself something of value. Give them something of value to take away. Even if it's a tall tale speech, that's fine. Put some little truth in there. Give them something to walk away with. After all, Martin Luther King told a tall tale, didn't he? He told a tall tale about a society and a world where people from different backgrounds and different beliefs treated each other with respect and lived in harmony. Tall tale. It's still a tall tale, unfortunately, but I think we're closer. I think we're actually closer, and we're closer partly because of him. And that's what we can do as Toastmasters. So, okay, we're going to become superheroes now. We're not just Toastmasters anymore. We can become weapons of mass creation. Weapons of mass communication. So we got to come up with a cool name, don't we? Got to come up with a cool name. Anybody have an idea?
Super speakers?
Super speakers? Okay, I'll give you a suggestion. All right? How about Keepers of the Flame? Keepers of the Flame.